relaxed atmosphere, and you can put your hand up and ask questions then. So it depends on whether you would like to wait or get your question done earlier. So have you got it all worked out now, Carl?
I believe we're streaming to YouTube now. So good evening, everybody over there. Thank you for joining us.
You can put your hand.
There you go. That's the confirmation. Heard you speaking over there on YouTube just a few seconds later there, Astrid. So thank you very much. Thank you for being here this evening for this Portugal Calling webinar. Your questions answered by a Portuguese tax expert. And this is tax in Portugal, what to expect without the NHR, with an added plot twist tonight with the resignation of the Prime Minister and the President speaking in about 25 minutes to say share how he sees the country going forward. Are you considering a move to Portugal? I'm just going to tee it up here and let you know what you're in for this evening. Are you considering a move to Portugal or already living here but unsure about the intricacies of the Portuguese tax system, especially without now the non-habitual resident regime, the NHR regime? Discover the differences between the tax benefits enjoyed by those with NHR and what residents can expect without the status. Tax is a complex and individual issue with many personal variables. It is everywhere in the world, and I think especially so here in Portugal, and it's more difficult when you don't know what you're up against. During this webinar, we will be covering the most commonly asked questions and misconceptions, including addressing misinformation about Portuguese tax rates and the NHR, the current tax rates in Portugal at the moment. Are there situations in which you would pay the same with or without NHR? Are there ways to reduce your income tax bill without the NHR? A great question to consider tonight. Do you still need to pay tax in your home country? And among other things, I'm sure that we'll discuss tonight, does the double taxation agreement mean you pay tax in the country from which the income was sourced, as well as paying tax here in Portugal? So following his appearance on our Mingle with the Moving to Portugal Migration Dream Team recently, where I described him as the Harry Potter of Portuguese taxation, which may stick, and you will understand why if you've not met him before. We welcome back Duarte Cruz from Conceito. Good evening to you, man of the moment. Duarte, how are you?
Hello, everyone. I'm fine, thank you.
I suspect you've been busy just recently.
Yeah, just a little.
Okay, and thank you for being here tonight to talk about this. Where would you like to start tonight, Duarte?
Well, as we know, in about 24 minutes or so, the president will speak and will announce his decision concerning the resignation of the prime minister, which will bring us some additional clarity on what's going to happen with the NHR, right? So with the proposal state budget, we were not optimistic that the NHR was to continue in 2024, but the recent events from this week might change this. And basically, we have three scenarios, three possible outcomes from the presidential words. And so maybe I would start by explaining those three possibilities, and then maybe address some questions before the president actually speaks, and I get my inside information from my colleagues that are working with me, even though they are not here.
Well, that is very reassuring to know that you've got colleagues standing by who are going to let you know what's happening live from the president's podium tonight. Yeah, and this is speculation as of what we previously knew and up until the president speaks, and you're going to share those scenarios with us. So yes, we'd love to hear those. I mean, people would have been very, if not relieved, then interested if they'd written off the idea of moving to Portugal before the end of the year and claiming the NHR regime. So tell us how this might affect the situation. What are those scenarios, Duarte?
So scenario number one is the president appointing someone from the Socialist Party to act prime minister for the next few months before elections are called. If this happens, it will happen with the purpose of approving the state budget, and therefore the NHR regime will die the NHR regime as we know it will die from January. That's the outcome for scenario number one. And then we have scenario number two, which actually has 2.1 and 2.2. Scenario number two is the president dissolving the parliament with immediate effects and calling elections with immediate effects to be held in the next 55 days. However, there are two possibilities here, because the president can do this while at the same time arranges the opposition parties to approve the state budget. And in that case, it's very likely that the NHR will also terminate as of January, or he will just ignore the state budget, call elections, and postpone the state budget. This last scenario would be the one allowing the NHR regime to continue at least for some part of 2024, and that's because the state budget would only be approved in April, May, June 2024. So until then, we would have an active NHR regime working for us.
And people would be able to apply until that point.
Exactly. Or even eventually until the end of 2024, because it's possible that the changes are only applicable after the date of approval. So that is merely speculative, but there are different possibilities there. What's more important is that under that scenario, there would be NHR for the first few months of 2024, which would definitely be very useful for some people.
Okay, so that's the best case scenario, and somebody is already saying fingers crossed for that extension in the chat. Let's say a few hellos, and then we'll come back to you, Duarte, and you've got somebody metaphorically whispering in your ear for when the president speaks. I was going to say when he joins us. I don't mean actually joins us, but when we get that information from the direction of the presidential palace or wherever he's speaking from this evening. Ed and Sharon, good to see you in Canada. And we've got Rehan, greetings from our first night in our rental near Óbidos. Well done, congratulations. Lovely to celebrate milestones of people moving to Portugal as well. I'm not seeing any video, just hearing audio. Jose, I think most people can see the video. That might be at your end. Allah from Portimao, from Lowell. Go get him, Carl. Well, I'm doing my best tonight. It's a very exciting and auspicious evening tonight. Huge thanks to Carla and the team at EI, from Rehan as well. Mike from Coastal Virginia. Hello from the wilderness. Denise is with us as well. Bonoit from beautiful Cascais, from Anna. Who I enjoyed your comments earlier on tonight. Anna. Laurie's here. Botard from Scottsdale, Arizona. From Laurie, good evening to you. Jose Cruz. Could this bombshell potentially delay the changes proposed, reference applying to the NHR, as in delay the end of it? I think you've already heard, Jose Duarte's answer on that. Phyllis, hola, botard. And yes, David, well said. Jose Cruz, 30 minutes will tell. We'll make the best possible sense of it, or Duarte and team certainly will, after the president has spoken, and we've heard more from Marcelo. Allah from Carl, a different one. And Allah from Los Angeles S is here tonight as well. A question from George. Did nobody expect Costa to resign? I think with the politics, we'll do more of that, and we'll talk to our constitutional expert, Daniel Reza Pelicano. Hopefully he'll be with us on the Dream Team session tonight, if he hasn't been distracted by all of this that's going on this evening. So more about the general politics, I think, in the Dream Team session, which happens at 9. Hello from Seattle. Good evening to you, Grace. I'm looking for questions here. Here's the first one. Isa, hello everyone. I have a question for Duarte. Let's see if we can answer this with the information we have so far, Duarte. I applied for the NHR through a lawyer and got it approved. However, in the NHR document, the previous country of residence is wrong. The lawyer chose by mistake my country of birth, which I never lived in, as my previous country of residence instead of the country on my old NIF paper. How can I fix this mistake? Can it be done by emailing Finances or submitting an appeal? What should I do? Sounds a little bit desperate there.
Well, first of all, it's not a major thing. Okay, that's not going to affect the status of your NHR. If it's already granted, it's because you meet the requirements, so you have nothing to worry about. However, I understand that you might want to fix this, and you can use your online page, your tax page online, to get in touch with the tax authorities and ask them to rectify this.
Very good. That's a big relief, I'm sure, S. So let's go back, and please keep those questions coming in. We will come to them. as we're juggling all of the various sources of information tonight. Let's go back to the more general things and those pointers that I mentioned before. Addressing misinformation about the Portuguese tax rates and the NHR. I imagine you've had to do a lot of that in the last couple of weeks. Well, I mean, you do that generally speaking with your job. What is some of the misinformation that has shocked you most in recent times?
I think people seem to struggle with the idea of progressive tax rates sometimes and the way they work. I was actually reading one of the questions here in the chat, and it was related with that. It was related with capital gains from a foreign country that might be subject to progressive tax rates in Portugal. And the fact is that without knowing the actual taxable income, we cannot tell what is the applicable tax rate. And this creates a nervous feeling on people because they would like to know in advance what's the right number, and that's not always possible. So in this type of situation, that's something we have to discuss, because people hear about the 48% and they go crazy thinking that half of their income will be handled to the government. That's not how it works. So I think this is the biggest misconception that exists when people have this boogeyman of the 48% chasing them.
It certainly is that, isn't it? I don't know what the Harry Potter analogy is for the 48% ghost or spectre on the horizon. But yeah, that's been around a lot on social media, isn't it? And people are understandably terrified by that. But if I understand you correctly, you can't say what the tax rate will be until you know what the sum is that's going to be taxed because of the progressive tax system.
That's exactly what I said.
Excellent.
And I would say maybe a dementor. As for the 48%.
Yes, okay. Thank you for that. Language we can all understand. All right, brilliant. Current tax rates in Portugal, then, 48% being the dementor and the one that everybody fears. Can you give us some general guidance on the current tax rates in Portugal?
Well, that's a very generic question.
Yeah, if
maybe
you can answer at that level, that would be great.
Okay, basically, Portuguese taxation in Portuguese will be subject either to progressive tax rates or to special flat tax rates. I would say that without the NHR, which is the assumption we are working under, without the NHR, most income is taxable according to progressive tax rates, with a few exceptions. For instance, capital income, such as dividends and interest, would be subject to a flat tax rate of 28%. Rental income, 28% as well. Capital gains on property are subject to progressive tax rates, but capital gains on stock, bonds, and this type of instruments can be subject to 28% or to progressive tax rates, depending on the amount of income that is determined in each year. So when then we have of course the aggravated tax rates for tax haven, for blacklisted countries, and that's 35% on most types of income.
Okay, aggravated tax rates. That's such an interesting turn of phrase, isn't it? So thank you for those generalities. And that's really telling us, isn't it, that whilst it may be in some way useful to have that general guide, you really do need to do your own numbers, don't you? Everyone needs to have a consultation and really understand what's going to happen with their particular situation. As you said, you know, it can be useful and indicative to talk in a generic sense, but it's really important to have a personal consultation and understand what you're up against as an individual, because everybody's situation is different. And you can contact Duarte at Conceito at Duarte.Cruz at Conceito.pt. So there you go. That first two bullet points that I went through before. The next one, are there situations in which you would pay the same with or without the NHR? So most people have panicked, haven't they, hearing that the NHR is going. Might it be that some people are just going to end up in the same situation anyway? Is that a possibility, Duarte?
Yes, of course. Let's take the example of capital gains on stocks. If the capital gains are not US sourced, in which case they would be exempt under the NHR. If they come from any other location, basically, the taxation would be similar with or without the NHR, meaning that If the capital gains are lower than around 80,000, you would get taxed at 28%. If the capital gains are higher than 80,000, then it gets more complex, because you need to apply the progressive tax rates. And this is the same with or without the NHR. There are not many other situations where things are exactly the same, but taking the example of retirement income, you currently have the flat 10% with the NHR, right? Without the NHR, you are subject to progressive tax rates on that income. But depending on the level of income, the progressive tax rates might actually be very similar to the 10%, because of the way it works. There's the automatic deduction, and there's the application of the different tax rates according to each bracket. And sometimes it will end up being 14 or 15% instead of 10, which obviously is a difference, but it's not a major one.
Again, another good reason to run the numbers and see. But that's really helpful. Thank you very much on that. Are there ways to reduce your income tax bill without the NHR? Presumably there are.
Yes, there are. We have several deductions that you can that can be used to reduce the tax bill. Those, I mean, the list is very long, but I can give you a few examples. You have health expenses, you have education expenses, you have general expenses like going to the supermarket. You have a percentage of the VAT of every meal that you have in a restaurant. So you go out for dinner, and the percentage of the VAT will be deductible to your tax bill at the end of the year. You have the expenses with renting an apartment or a property in general, which we also discussed a few weeks ago. So yeah, those are a few examples of how to reduce the tax bill if you don't have the NHR, right? Because if you have the NHR and you are already subject to a flat special tax rate, then you cannot use the deductions. But if you are subject to the progressive tax rates, yes, then the deductions are available to you, and they are the best way to reduce the tax bill.
Yeah, and your vet bills and your mechanics bill, all of them. There are many headings out there for this, and presumably that's the way you would have coached your clients upon the conclusion of their 10 years of NHR benefit anyway. It's good practice, isn't it, to get into understanding those reliefs that you can get on various aspects of daily life, and actually not only knowing them, but learning how to qualify for them by going into the Finances portal. And I think the word is validating, isn't it? Validating your experience.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's good practice, and it's a good habit to get into. And that is why, of course, you ask for your NIF number in various situations, and why your children have NIF numbers as well, or NIFs, not NIF numbers. That's an unnecessary repetition, isn't it? It's already a numero at the beginning there, the N for numero. And that's why the kids have them, because their education is also a possible relief, if I'm not mistaken, Duarte.
That's entirely correct. Actually, only by the fact that you have children, you have already an automatic deduction. So you can deduct 600 euros for each child in your household. So that's an automatic deduction you get. But going to the supermarket is a decision. Popping up children is not like that. So it's not something I actively suggest.
Well, yes, so that's a possible conversational thread, which I'm not going to indulge right now. Okay, we could take these two together. Do you still need to pay tax in your home country? And does the double taxation agreement mean you pay tax in the country from which the income was sourced, as well as paying in Portugal? Another thing, I guess, misinformation, and another thing that's confused people. So if you could give us a bit of clarity on that, I'd be grateful.
Sure. So the fact that double tax treaties exist between countries helps that double taxation does not happen, right? That's the entire goal of a double tax treaty. So you will definitely, if you do things properly, and if you are not a tax resident in both countries at the same time, which is something that the double tax treaty would not protect, then you will only pay taxes in one country, at least for the same income. What I'm trying to say is that you might pay taxes in Portugal for your retirement income in the United States as well, but you'll never pay the same tax on the same amount.
Mhm.
It's always a matter of difference. To make this clearer, if you have to pay 15% tax in the United States, and then the Portuguese tax rate is 20%, you will not pay the full 20% in Portugal. You'll pay the difference. You'll pay the 5% after you have paid the 15%. Now, what's very important here, and this is also a topic that we already discussed before, is the order in which the tax returns are submitted. And this is a game. It's a puzzle that you will figure out on a case-by-case basis, because you have to understand which solution is better. Is it better to submit the foreign tax return first and then submit the Portuguese tax return, or is it better to do it the other way around?
Yeah.
Usually this is connected with the sources of income. It's connected with the fact that withholding taxes might exist. But there are several factors that change this decision, and then it's up to determining what's the best course of action in each situation, and then act accordingly.
Okay, and the general advice, as I understand it, is that you would have somebody like yourself managing taxation affairs here, and you would continue, let's say you're from the United States with your CPA over there. Is it then down to the individual to make that call, having had conversations with each of those people? Because you're not likely to be talking to that CPA, are you?
Well, yes and no. The decision is always the taxpayer's decision. So the client is the one who decides what's going to happen after hearing the advice from Portugal and from the United States in this case. For some clients, I do talk with their foreign advisors.
Okay, all right. So that is possible. Okay, thank you for that. Is there anything else you want to say on that, on the matter of being taxed in your original country and double taxation?
Well, I can add that some sources of income are taxable in the country of source, but most of them, and not to say all of them, are taxable in the country of residency. And this is obviously without any special regime like the NHR, right? The NHR creates a completely different environment. But if you are a regular tax resident, then yeah, the rule of thumb is that Portugal will have territorial competence to tax every single source of income.
Because you are a tax resident here. Okay, good. Thank you for that. So far, let's get into some of the specific questions. And I recognize, Duarte, that we might be interrupted here this evening by news from the president. On that note, it's thought that a dissolution of parliament will occur. Is that right? Is that what the word on the grapevine?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right.
So the parliament will be dissolved like 99%.
Okay.
We are still waiting for confirmation. Now I'm starting to receive some messages. So
right, okay. I've got CNN open as well, CNN Portugal, and I'm looking at cars arriving and podiums, people moving in around podiums. So we will have that information coming through, and in the meantime, take some specific questions here. And I imagine we'll also stop the public recording and streaming onto YouTube in about 15 or 20 minutes. Then we can go to a more intimate environment where people might want to ask some more personal questions. So 15 or 20 minutes more on the live session here over on YouTube, through YouTube, and here on the Zoom webinar. We had a question from Lynette that S was connecting to as well. Please advise the tax rate percentage for capital gains on a UK property sold without NHR. I think you referred to this, didn't you? And S says, to piggyback off Lynette's question, what is the tax rate percentage for capital gains on US property sold? So UK and US scenarios, if you don't mind.
It's the same. It's a progressive tax rate. We have to take into account the actual capital gain, and then we will have to take into account the tax that was paid in that country and see if there's any difference.
There you go. That's for you, Lynette, and for S. Laurie, thank you for this. If I sell my US home before my 3rd year in Portugal, I will qualify for the US home tax exclusion and owe no US tax. How would the sale be treated in Portugal with or without the NHR? 2 different scenarios there.
With the NHR, no taxation in Portugal.
Okay.
So you get the golden prize. Without the NHR, progressive tax rates, and then because you don't have any foreign tax to use in Portugal, you'll be taxed in Portugal for 50% of the capital gain.
Okay, I see that the president has taken to the podium, so I imagine there'll be a bit of information coming through to you in a little while, which you'll interpret for us for the benefit of us expats, immigrants and foreigners here. In the meantime, we'll see if we can address a few more questions. Thanks, everybody, for all the questions that are coming through in the chat tonight. David and Lynn are here in Florida, and Connie at Vancouver Airport. Happy travels, or maybe you're picking somebody up. I'm not sure, Connie. I understand that the NHR abandonment is a bill that is supposed to be discussed and voted on the November 29th. Will this happen now? Well, we'll see tonight. That all important information that Duarte and colleagues will share with us will influence that. Okay, so we've got a specific figure now. Capital gains around 500,000. Is there a ballpark on how much would be due to pay? What's the progressive on $500,000?
I can run some quick numbers.
Wow, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right.
But please taking into consideration that this is just an estimation, right? This is just something that I'm
for information. Yeah, this is not a quote of any kind. This is for information and illustrative.
I will not be liable for this information.
No, well said. Well said. It's just indicative for you as a favor to you, S, tonight.
So, and you say this 500,000, it's 2 people, it's a single person. What's the...
Good question. Okay, S will have to get back to us on that, I think. If you can keep that spreadsheet open, or whatever magic you're doing there, Harry. So rental income from the US would it be taxed only on the remainder being already taxed in the US? Grace and Charlie, have they listened correctly because of the double taxation treaty?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Rental income. Yeah, of course. I know you're multitasking. I mean, you've got 3 things going on as far as I can tell. I'm probably more, Duarte, tonight. So rental income from the US, would it be taxed only on the remainder, having already been taxed in the United States?
Without the NHR. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
With the NHR, it's not taxed at all.
Okay. And a question from Vicky. This goes back to what you said before. Can any deductions be claimed if filing under the NHR? You mentioned that before, didn't you? So no, it's a separate system. Wendy and Dan, for a lot of US people, long-term capital gains have 0% tax to the US IRS. Does that mean that the US persons in Portugal with NHR status pay no tax anywhere on US sourced long-term capital gains? Have we got enough information to answer that?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Okay, I have, again, I mean, what you just said applies to everything said here tonight, doesn't it? From the information we've been given, Duarte is doing his best to give you an answer. It's not binding, it's just indicative, and the important thing to do is to have a personal consultation and really go through those numbers on a personal level. Duarte Cruz at Conceito.pt. Jean says, I have a friend here who has started a company and can write off his car. Not in that sense, the expenses thereof, and other business expenses, and pays himself the Portuguese minimum wage. Is that also a way to reduce a tax bill by starting a company, Duarte?
It really depends. It's not, there's no solution that fits everyone. It depends on the specifics. It depends on the type of income. It depends on the type of activity. It depends on so many things that it might be a way, but it's not something that I can tell you yes or no. It's not black and white. It's like most tax matters, or legal matters, is very gray.
If I may say, like many matters in life, and perhaps in Portugal, it depends. You got to take a deeper look and get advice on these matters. You mentioned that rental payments, house rentals are a deduction. What about mortgage payments?
No, that's not deductible in any way.
Okay, thank you. That's for Grace and Charlie. Where can we source the list of deductions? Is that a good reason to get in touch with you as well for that longer list, or can people find that out of Finances, Duarte?
Yes, you can check this in a place called E-fatura. I'm gonna write in the chat.
Yeah. And to do this, of course, people need to have logged into the portal, presumably. And that's a massive step here in Portugal, isn't it? Is to have your login, which you can do using your NIF as part of it, and then a code as another part. And you'll be wanting to keep access to that for yourself, as well as having your fiscal representative do that. Because without your login, you can't do anything really, can you?
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. The E-fatura. Okay, over on YouTube, we have a question as well. Let me come back to you on that host over there, or if someone could cut and paste, Astrid, if you wouldn't mind cutting and pasting that would be great. We've got a YouTube member with a question. Vicky, must one's NIF be on the physical receipt in order to claim the deduction? The specifics of NIF etiquette here, or even without the NIF on the receipt, can I just manually enter it on Finances and have it counted?
Well, if you include, in order to use the deduction, you need to include the NIF, as it will be directly uploaded into the system. So it will appear, automatically. If you have the physical receipt and it has your NIF, but it's not been uploaded, then you can upload it manually. But if it doesn't have your NIF, don't bother, because it will not be accepted.
And that's why you're being asked. That's why it needs inputting correctly, and that's what validates that's what leads to validation.
Exactly.
The establishment who is asking you, or you're telling your NIF. That's what makes the difference. Great question, Vicky. Thank you. You have another one. Does health insurance premiums count against the general family expenses deduction category or the health category? That's very specific, Vicky. Are you on the portal at the moment as we speak? I wonder. But where would insurance premiums go? Presumably in health.
I don't think it will go in health. It's a good question, but I don't think it counts. I don't think insurance. I don't think that's going to count.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I think
so. I have some updates.
We've got news, haven't we? We've got an election date, haven't we?
Yeah, we do.
Go ahead.
So the parliament has been dissolved, as we expected.
Okay.
The elections will take place in March. So later than what I anticipated. I anticipated that the elections would be in January. This means that the goal of the president is clearly to approve the state budget before a new government. So this was the scenario, the most likely one. And this means that this state budget will be approved. So we are looking very realistically to the end of the NHR in 2024. As of January 2024, if the state budget is approved before December 31st. But as it was mentioned before, there will still be a discussion about the exact terms of the state budget. So what we have is a proposal with the NHR, with the end of the NHR, and with the alternative substitute regimes that they are creating. And now people are going to discuss this initial form, and maybe it's going to take a different form, but I think it's fair to assume that as of January 2024, NHR as we know it will no longer exist.
By that, do you mean it will be extinguished by the 31st of January, or
by the 31st of December 2023? That will be the last day of NHR.
Okay, so it is as people feared. We are back to that scenario, and it looks like the resignation of the Prime Minister here in Portugal hasn't extended the date, because the election has been called and the budget of 24 will be acted upon. Have I summed that up correctly, Duarte?
Yes, you did.
Wow. Okay. Anything else that's coming through from the presidential palace that may be of interest to the foreigners here?
No. Yeah, the confirmation that only after the state budget is officially voted and approved will will the resignation of the Prime Minister be published and made official. So it's going to happen. Right now is basically acting Prime Minister, but he will do that until the state budget will be approved. So yeah, we're going to have a state budget this year. And the parliament will only be officially dissolved after the state budget is approved.
Well, thank you. I don't know if you can send a little text or WhatsApp to your colleagues who are in support there. But thank you very much, Duarte, for that news. Hot off the press, or hot off the press and the press tonight, straight from the presidential palace. So thank you very much for that information and the clarification, the interpretation you've given us there. I'll do a couple more questions and I'll try and make them more general ones. And then when we stop recording, we can go into the more personal questions. And we have the Dream Team session, of course, at 9 this evening. US citizen here, Mike, reading the US/Portugal tax treaty, it appears that pensions derived from government service are only taxable by the source country, in our case, the United States, and would not be taxable by Portugal. Is that correct? And if so, is the Social Security retirement benefit arising from the same employment also exempt? Great question, Mike.
Well, under the NHR, it's completely, the public pensions are not taxable in Portugal. Without the NHR, that's a good question, because on the one hand, the tax treaty clearly states that these pensions should only be taxable in the country of source. But it's possible that under territorial rules, Portugal will try to tax any difference. But that's something we need to take a look at, the specific double tax treaty that's applicable, and get a feeling and get a more clear picture on the on that. But okay. I would say that Portugal would still be able to tax the difference, if any.
Okay, thank you for that, Duarte. And we'll go to Randa, who asked a simple question: can you be a tax resident of two countries?
Well, you can, but I don't advise people to do that.
Yeah, I wonder what's behind that question. Maybe a very generous person.
No, it's common that people want to keep their original tax residencies for some reason. There are a lot of people doing this. If you have the NHR, it's not a particularly serious problem, unless you have capital gains, and yeah, in that case, it might be a problem. But without the NHR, it's definitely a problem, because both countries will want to tax the whole income, and then you cannot be protected by the double tax treaty, because as I was explaining before, the double tax treaty is not designed to allow people for double tax residency. It's designed to eliminate double taxation between country of source and country of residency.
All right, thanks, Duarte, and good. Thanks for that question, Randa. I hope you understand this better than me. This question, Duarte. Shubin asked: does both federal 20 and state 15 count for the offset for Portuguese tax?
I have no idea what are those things. I would have to make a search online to see exactly, because it's very specific. You know, yeah. There are some specific things that I know from the United States, but as I'm not a specialist in US law, then these very specific things are a mystery to me.
Fair enough. And there must be so many of them. So thank you for that clarification. You're the expert this side of the Atlantic, of course. Is there a tax agreement, asked Ed and Sharon, between Canada and Portugal? Our plan,
yes.
Okay, there is. Our plan, once we agree to move, is we sell everything and move it through Spartan to a Portuguese bank and move to Portugal. Then the only thing we have left in Canada is a pension income from Canada. So yes is Duarte's answer to that. We'll talk about probably that large increase in one health insurance company in the company of Winsurance later on. Not one I suspect Winsurance deal a lot with, but they might do, and we can ask that question, Allegra, a little bit later on in the Dream Team session, the link for which is in the chat now. So join us at 9 for further conversation among a whole panel of people who help you move to Portugal and what the implications might be of this Prime Minister's resignation and the President's speech this evening, and the election, of course, that's coming up, as we found out, in March of 2024. David is asking, if you sell a buy-to-let in the United Kingdom and are overseas, the value is taken from the 2015 year. Is that right? So assume that is the same when Portugal look at it. That's a bit of information from David. Thank you very much. Oh, with that, if you are still running those numbers and you're prepared to, Duarte, that's a married person with the 500,000 capital gain. They have 3 kids. The first 500,000 isn't taxed in the US for the married couple. So what does that mean here in Portugal? I'll come to your questions. I'll do a few more, and then so for those who want to talk more privately, we can do that in just a moment. So Duarte is working that out for S there.
Yeah, just give me a minute here, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Jose, I'm seeing your question. Wendy and Dan, thank you for that. Thank you, Vian, as well. And Ivan, thank you for your questions this evening. How can a budget be approved without a parliament? Is a question we might consider later on as well. And Anna, thank you for your input and help keeping an eye on the TV, I think. And thank you for that contribution, David. I think we understand what you're getting at there. I won't read it out. Thank you very much.
I'm ready when you are.
Go on, Duarte.
So I would say that since only half of the capital gain is taxable in Portugal, it would be something around 100,000 of tax.
All right. David and Lynn, thank you for that, Duarte. David,
regarding the sorry for the interruption.
Go ahead.
Regarding the question of how can a state budget be approved without a parliament, there is a parliament.
Yeah,
it will be dissolved. Yeah, it will be dissolved officially. Now we know it's going to be dissolved, but it will officially be dissolved only after the state budget is approved. Just for clarity.
Whether you like the man or not, and I have to say, I've not met many Portuguese people who do. He is still the Prime Minister, isn't he? He is the caretaker of the job, and it would seem now, and is until his resignation is accepted. So he is still the Prime Minister. And it's very interesting. On that note, just briefly, I haven't met many Portuguese people who are as interested in this as I seem to be. I'm thinking, like, wow, the Prime Minister's resigned. What does this mean for us? And I'll ask Portuguese friends, and they'll say, yeah, about time he went. And they're very calm about it. There's not the same level of interest. Why would that be, would you say, Duarte?
First of all, it's extremely surprising to me that that we hear that from people, since people voted in him and they have the majority in the parliament. So back in January 2022, there were more than half of the voting population that really liked him. So go figure.
Must be the people I know. Must be the community.
Yeah, I don't know where they are either, but usually it's like that. Rats are the first ones to abandon. On the topic of concern to a Portuguese resident, a regular resident, this doesn't have much impact, because we will still pay a huge amount of taxes. Everything will stay basically the same. They will say that they are reducing the taxation, but then they are actually increasing it every year. So that's just the same old thing. So yeah.
And of course, the NHR was available to Portuguese people who lived abroad for more than 5 years. What's your sense of that? I mean, that must have upset a few people's plans with Portuguese people coming home, or not now, as the case may be.
I think they will still come home, because most Portuguese people that were living abroad will live off their employment activities. So and the fact that there is a new regime which is very interesting for employment and self-employment income makes that if a person wanted to return to Portugal, they will return. And also there is the personal and emotional connection that in this case it's sometimes stronger than the money.
Absolutely, absolutely. It must be, right? Okay, that question over on YouTube. I traded on the EU market and got a capital gain 100,000 euros. I'm under the NHR. Is it 20% taxes applicable for me on 100,000 trading in Europe? You're shaking your head there, Duarte.
No, no, no. Unless you are doing it professionally, it cannot be considered employment income or self-employment income. And only those two are subject to the 20%. Capital income or capital gains in this case is either subject to 28% if it's long term, meaning that if you hold the stock for more than 1 year, it's considered long term, and the tax rate is 28% on the full amount of the capital gain. On the other hand, if you hold the stock for less than 1 year and you get a capital gain, it's considered a short-term capital gain, a more speculative capital gain. So you will be subject to progressive tax rates if your income is higher than more or less 80,000, and the 48% will be applicable. Okay. On the part that exceeds 80,000, the rest will be subject to the applicable tax brackets.
Okay, that's really helpful. And a question we don't get so much of now, and because of course the crypto crowd, as it were, Portugal was quite an attractive place to come, wasn't it, for people involved in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin?
It still is.
Still is, okay. Post goes on to say, now we have a very foggy meaning of professional trader with crypto in the crypto market. Is there any clarification you can give on that?
No, I mean, I have a personal opinion, but it's not something I'm comfortable
fair enough
commenting now.
Yeah, okay. So there you go. Duarte Cruz at Conceito.pt. Thank you very much so far. We do have other questions, and people might like to pop their hand up and unmute over here on a Zoom call. For those interested in the numbers with the vote, 60% abstention, 42% voted. From that, only 42 voted for him, and that's Anna's contribution to the rise and fall, it would seem, of the Prime Minister. So thank you for that, Anna. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for everybody's questions, which will continue.
Just to say that not the majority of the Portuguese voted him. Okay, please don't say that.
All right, thank you for your
it's the majority of the voters, but
yes, not the majority.
It's 2,300,000 approximately. It's too much already, but it's not the majority of the Portuguese.
Thank you, Anna.
Because we have high levels of abstention, so
yes,
that's why.
We get a good sense of where you stand on this matter. Thank you.
Yeah, I hope so.
Thank you for joining us.
And for YouTube and for internet.
Yes. Oh, yes.
But you know, Anna, people who didn't vote at all were actually voting on him.
Yeah.
That's what got him elected.
And and God forbid us, but he will win again. So I don't know why all of this. Well, not he, but some of his colleagues. So
okay, all right.
Same.
I'm going to stop the streaming to YouTube now. Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you very much.
I can swear now.
No, not yet. You can't. Wait a minute. I haven't stopped it yet. But hold your fire, as it were. So we are.